I'm going to talk about something not the conventional agile world. Right? It's a little different. You might have experienced it to an extent, but I'm trying to give you a deep dive into something called as disruptive innovation. Right? So, I've been highly influenced by these two people to make this presentation. Some of their works, some of their talks have influenced me to share this knowledge with you. Clayton Christensen, unfortunately, on 23rd Jan of this year, he passed away. And Rajiv Bajaj, the managing director of Bajaj Auto Limited, is one of the inspiration for this talk. So what is disruptive innovation? First of all, what is disruption? Disruption is a small set of people who could disrupt a corporate, a startup. These are called disruptors. They create, and the word of disruption means that they change their entire business model. The current model of large companies, the model what they're working, will no more work. These entrants, they start with small segments, and generally these are the segments that the big corporates don't care for. They are the neglected part of the sector. In the particular customer segment you have, they don't worry about that part of the segment. So entrants enter from it and then slowly capture the entire business. And disruptive innovation never starts from the top end of the market. It always starts from the low end of the market. And we will see some examples of how this can happen, and I'll share you some practical examples. And again, disruptive innovation doesn't deal with mainstream customers. They don't deal with mainstream, but they deal with certain set of customers who are actually understream, and then once you kind of disrupt, they will take up the entire, they will hit the mainstream customers over a period of time. It's a time-bound process. You can't do disruptive innovation like this. It doesn't happen. It's a process. There is a time for it. You need to spend some time on it. And most of the organizations who do business, who do disruptive innovations, their business model is completely different from the conventional corporate business models. It's completely different. We always ask questions. An organization was doing a great business once upon a time, and today it is nowhere in the market. Why? Simple answer is blame the managers, because they took the decisions. But it has not got to do with the management. It's got to do with something else which we're going to learn in the next 45 minutes. And most disruptions fail and very few succeed. Most of them actually fail. So let's spend some time to understand what they are. Can somebody tell me what is common in all of this?
Out of the market.
Some are out of the market. They have all been disrupted by startups. All of these great companies that you see here, once upon a time who were doing great, who were doing a lot of profit, some of them are still there, but their products have been disrupted, or some of them have been displaced from the market. So when disruptive innovation hits very badly, corporates get displaced from the market. It's called displacing innovations. So let us understand some facts of US economy. And often people ask me, why US economy? I tell them, man, in this world, if US sneezes once, Asia will catch cold for a week. And if US sneezes continuously for a week, Asia will catch cold, have a running nose for about a year. So it is good to import some facts of economy, because we are all going to be great leaders moving forward. Post-World War, USA has seen 9 recessions. Among the 9 recessions, so what happens in a recession? The market is here, there is a recession, the market dips. It hits a low, and it takes some time to come back to the original point in where the market was running. For the first 6 recessions, the average time to come back from the rock bottom to where it was before was about 6 months. But what happened was, 91-92 when there was a recession, it took 16 months to come back. And 2001-2002 recession, it took 39 months to come back. And now, it has been 72 months as of today that the US economy has never hit what it was its peak once upon a time. So what's the reason for this? Why is this happening? Before we get into understand why is this happening, I want to give you a little feel of what is meant by disruptive innovation. So it all starts like this. The area of each of these circles or ovals, what you see, represents the population of people, or it represents the volume of customers who can buy the product or use the service. So let's take about our computer industry that we use every day in the morning till night. It all started with mainframes. The cost of a mainframe was $2 million US, and the gross margin that you would get by selling a mainframe was 1.2 million US dollars. But look at the amount of circle you have. Very few corporates, large corporates would actually able to buy it. So the market was only to a few customers, but the profit margins were very high. Who disrupted mainframes? Personal computers. So personal computers. Now what happened? Look at the area now. The area is big. Now what has happened? The cost of personal computers were almost like $2,000, and the gross margin per computer was $700. Is it a business viable? It is business viable because the volume of people who will buy is more. You have more opportunities to sell now. So when personal computers hit mainframes, what were mainframes doing?
Banking and other.
They were trying to say, how can we make mainframes cheaper? How can we improve the efficiency of our mainframes, our computers? As personal computers took over, we hit something called as smartphones. Cost of a smartphone is about $200. Profit what you can make is about $80. Now though the profits are less, there was a huge number of market there and people were buying, and hence they made a lot of profit. Is it business viable? Yes, it is business viable. Now what were personal computers doing there? They were trying to improve the efficiency of their personal computers, reduce the cost. We do this now. Reduction of cost. We will reduce the material used or do something so that they can sell the personal computers more. Eventually, smartphones have taken over the market. This is how the disruptive innovation happens. Let's understand the life cycle of a disruptive innovation from an economic standpoint. So most of the times, a disruptive innovation happens. We created a smartphone market. And now our own businesses are getting disrupted. Nokia got disrupted with some other phones. So what happens over a period of time is, once you do a disruptive innovation, the next you do is something called as sustaining innovation. You add more features into your product and sustain the product for a more duration of time in the market. Eventually, after your sustaining innovation, you move to something called as efficiency innovation. Now, example of efficiency innovation is Walmart, Reliance Fresh. What did they do? They did not innovate anything, but they made sure that you get products at a cheaper cost. So in sustaining innovation, what happens? So the life cycle is something like, you sustain, you disrupt, you come back, you disrupt again. What happened in Japan in 1970s and 1980s? The Japanese market was going very good. Why? Sony was disrupting, Toshiba was disrupting the electronics, and then Japanese were disrupting almost anything in electrical appliance. They were disrupting. Be it electrical and electronic and computers, they were Walkman. All the innovations happened there. How can that innovation happen? From efficiency innovation, you have to invest into disruptive innovation. This is the life cycle. What has happened from 1980s is that CEOs have been given that your role is only 5 years, improve the profit. To improve the profit, what should I do? I should have cash flow. I should have cash in hand. To increase the cash in hand, what should I do? I should not invest anywhere. If I don't invest, I don't disrupt. Over a period of time, instead of the feedback going like this, it's going like this. Only a small portion is going there. With small portion, you have disrupted the whole economic life cycle of organizations. And now you understand why the US economy has not hit what it was for the last 72 months. Nobody is disrupting. Nobody wants to invest money on new ideas. No, only a fraction of people are doing it. Because the life of a CEO in any organization is only 5 to 6 years. In 5 to 6 years, you have to create so much profit margin and go. Why would that guy invest in order to create profit margin? He would say, okay man, I have enough money, bank balance hai, dekho, are you happy now? I am happy now. So there is no, the cycle has been disrupted. Because of this disruption in cycle, the global economy has changed. Let's understand how does this model works. Any organization has 3 types of markets. You have something like a low-end market, you have a mainstream market, and you have a high-end market. And most of the organizations are catering to all the 3 markets. A startup can never enter the market from here. A startup will enter the market from here. This is the entrance. That's what I said. They start with the low end and slowly eat the entire. It's like a cancer. Starts with a small problem in a cell and becomes a tumor and eats the whole body. This is how disruptions happen. Let's take an example to understand this. By the way, how to kill a giant? How to kill these giants?
Ice.
If you read the stories, all these giants are killed by small kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is disruptive innovation. What happens if the two giants fight? They keep on fighting. Cold War. They kept on fighting. Who lost at the end of the day? Nobody won the game, that's all. We lost. The idea of systems thinking was died there. We were only fighting. So most of the time, small kids would kill big giants. This is the science behind disruptive innovation. Let's take an example of a steel industry. In the year 1975, lot of steel industries, we call as steel corporates in the United States, were producing 4 different types of steels. They were called as rebar steel, concrete reinforcing rebar steel. These are the steels you put in concrete to build structures. Second one is angle iron rods and bars. Third one was structural steel, and the last one was sheet steel. They were manufacturing everything. Some small startups called as mini mills started in the United States. They started using scrap steel. The steel that would get scrapped, they would bring that steel, like car bodies, some used material of steel. They would bring that steel. You can set up 2 or 3 furnaces in this room. A small mini mill. They started doing mini mills. Now look at what happened to the corporates. After they started doing mini mills, the gross margin for corporates at this sector was 7%. 7% was the profit. Now what happened? In the United States, when you have a segment where you can get 25 to 30% profit, if you are working with a 7% profit, it is called dog-eat-dog business. So the large company said, you want to do rebar steel? Do it. Who wants to work with this sector of 7%? I have 25 to 30% profit margin sectors. I will take care of it. So in pursuit of profit, the large companies fled the market, the entrants entered the market. It's all in the pursuit of profit. Now what happened here? These guys started doing it, and three or four mini mills started. Now competition started. Again, profits came down. The cost of rebar steel fell like anything. And now what happened? These guys started thinking of efficiency innovation. How can I make it more efficient? Reduce the cost of purchasing, that waste, this waste. They kept on doing it. Beyond a point, there was no way that they had to do. So what did these do? They just lifted their eyes ahead like this to see which is the next sector we can disrupt. Next sector was angle iron, iron and rods. The gross margin is 15%. So these mini mills started producing this. Now what did the managers in the corporate say? Managers in the corporate said, man, who wants to do this dog-eat-dog business? They said, forget about this dog-eat-dog business. I have profits margin of 18% to 25 to 30%. I would rather use that. Who wants to do this business? Take it. Now what happened? It was a win-win situation, right? Now what happened? The same story repeated again. Competition started. The prices of steel fell. There was a point when mini mills could not survive. Poor guys. What did they do again? They looked up again like this. They saw what? Structural steel. They came to the structural steel. And what did the large company said? Who wants to do this dog-eat-dog business, man? 18% profit. I have 25 to 30% profit. Have I told this story before? No. Same story repeats. History repeats itself. So it repeated. Over a period of time, by the year 1995, Nucor Steel, a small steel mill, declared that I am producing the sheet steel. And that day, the board of directors of corporate companies came and started thinking, what do we do now? We are being disrupted by a small startup. Today, in the United States, 65% steel is produced by small corporates, about 25% is produced by large corporates, and the rest is imported from China. Okay. This is what is happening. This is what happened to the steel industry. Let's look at the automobile industry. What did Japan do? They didn't go and tell, hey, General Motors, I'm coming you. They did not fight the giant with the giant. They entered like a small baby. They said, I'm going to do Corona first. And that was their corporate segment. The poorest of poor people in United States called college students. They were the poorest people there. So they targeted college students. And General Motors and Ford said, who wants the dog-eat-dog business of giving cars to college business? Take it. We don't want it. After this, they created Tercel, Corolla, Camry, Avalon, Starlet and Lexus. And today, what they are doing, what is Toyota doing? Toyota is not looking down, but it is looking up. I want to I want to make sure Mercedes-Benz will get rid of the market. But they forgot to see what is coming behind. Today, who is disrupting Toyota's market? Kia, Hyundai and Chery. In the pursuit of profit, you generally forget to see who is coming from the bottom. You forget to see this. And this is what creates a big problem in the industry. And if you ask Toyota, they say we are doing a great job. But ask them, what happened to Toyota cars in South Korea? North Korea? Hyundai has already taken it. They claim that they cannot be disrupted. But they also have been disrupted today. They are moving away. So it is important for us that while we are focusing on the pursuit of profit and looking to attract more customers, you also have to look at bottom, what is happening. Why is it we can't see at the bottom? Because for the large steel companies, for the IBMs and Accentures of the world, to work like a startup, man, you have to change your business model. Who can change my business model? Forget about it. You can't do agile transformation properly. Will you change the business model? Impossible. You can't do that. So they would like to pursue one level above, not see what is happening behind. But a good organization should look both up as well as bottom. So let's talk about homeopathy to understand how leaders should deal with this problem. Right? Let's talk about homeopathy. Even Ayurveda for it. What is a disease? What is a disease? It is dis plus ease. Something that is making you not to be in ease is a disease. How would one know that they have a disease? Just talk to your mobile phone will tell you, man, you have a disease. We all have the mobile disease, that's a different issue. Diseases are generally understood by symptoms. Symptoms, you have some irritation on your skin, something is wrong. Fever is a symptom of some infection in the body. We get to know through symptoms. And when the moment you understand symptoms, you need to know the cause of the symptom. You need to know the cause. Why is this happening to me? And most of the times we focus on what we call as endogenous causes. What is an endogenous cause? External causes. We always focus on external causes. Sometimes when I was a kid, I used to have always a running nose. Whether I come to Delhi, which is cold, in December I used to have a running nose, or whether I go to Hyderabad in summer, which is temperatures for something like 40 degrees, I used to have a running nose. I always blamed Delhi's weather and Hyderabad's weather for the cold. Over a period of time, I realized it is not Delhi weather or Hyderabad weather, something is wrong inside me only. And that is what is called as endogenous cause. And that is what we call in our corporate world as the root cause or the fundamental cause. To fix this fundamental cause, we need to understand what is called as the constitution, the body. You have to treat the body, not the symptom. Unfortunately, the allopathy treats the symptoms. That is why we get some quick results. We don't solve the problem. So you need to focus on creating a good business model to solve the problem. Understanding the whole business is what is called business model. And in this business model, you have to focus on what is not common with us, what is uncommon with us. All of us have hair. But all of us are different because of the different way of combing our hair. If somebody comes with a clean shaved head, that individual becomes a very differentiator. Everybody will look at that guy only. So focus on what is not common in you. That means, why is that when everybody were getting swine flu in Pune, why some of the people didn't get swine flu? Why? Because there is something else that is playing inside. And that is what we call as susceptibility, or finally, how do you understand? It is through vitality or immunity of the system. And that is what homeopathy and Ayurveda focuses on, building immunity. If you want to really learn how to deal with disruptive innovation as leaders, you have to build immunity in your organizations. Now, what do you mean by immunity? How do we build it? Let's take an example. Who is the in order to build an immunity, this is a small approach. Mr. Bajaj, who is the managing director of Bajaj Auto Limited, was going to yoga classes. And his yoga guru was BVS Iyengar, one of the most famous yoga teachers of the world. So he overdid yoga for some time one day, and there was a severe pain in the back. For 3 months, for a month, he did not come down. So he went to the doctor. The doctor did an MRI and said that in order to solve this problem, I have to do a surgery. But the yoga guru said, why don't you come, man? We will see what the problem is. He's afraid to go to the yoga guru. Why? This yoga guru will make him turn, twist and all, and then the pain will go up. He cannot sustain the pain. For 3 months, the problem did not solve, and he was not ready for a surgery. So he goes to the yoga guru once and asks him. Finally, he goes, he gives up, goes, and the yoga guru, as expected, makes him turn and twist everything for 2 hours. At the end of 2 hours, this man is doing Shirsasana, which means head is at the bottom, legs are at the top. The man who couldn't stand is now upside down. And the yoga guru asks him, tell me which part of your back is having a pain. He says, my right part. He puts 10 kgs on his legs and says, kick it. Your problem is solved. After 2 hours, he gets a lot of relief. He gets a lot of relief. And now, after 2 days, there is no pain. He calls up his guru and starts crying on the phone and says, Sir, Guruji, what did you do? He said, a very most important aspect of how to deal with disruption. He said, the allopathy doctor wanted to change your structure in order to enable a function called walking. He said, I did not do that, I did the other way. I made you do the function, the structure will align automatically. You cannot get 10 Virat Kohlis and make a beautiful, wonderful team which will win the World Cup. It will not happen. Get 10 ordinary people, show Virat Kohli to them, create small guys, enable the function of building the team. Over a period of time, they will deliver a fantastic work. This is how we need to deal with disruptions. You cannot change organizational structures and change transformation. It will not happen. Start with small. That's the beauty of Kanban. Kanban says start with what you know, inspect, adapt. That is the philosophy here. So it is important for us to understand that don't keep on changing structures. Nothing will work. You have to jump into the function and start realizing it. So how does it work? In order to deal with disruptive innovation, you need to understand what is kind of strategy. You have to build strategy. If you read the book called Marketing Wars, they explain this. Who is the industry leader in the cola industry? The drink industry. Who is the leader? Of course, Coke is the leader. If you want to disrupt Coke, will you go and create one more Coke-like and say, man, I am going to sell Coke at 10 rupees less than Coke bottle. What will Coke do? Coke has two options. Either they will eat you, rather Coke will drink you, or they will reduce the price by 10 rupees. If they reduce the price by 10 rupees, why would somebody buy your Coke? It cannot happen. So in this concept of defensive strategy, then whatever you do, you will always do to maintain your leadership decisions. So if you want to disrupt people like them, you have to come up with something called offensive strategy. You have to understand the weakness of the strength of your competitor. How do you do that? So Pepsi introduced something called 7-Up. Opposite in color, white color. This is dark color, and they told parents, do you want to give a dark color liquid like whiskey? White color, transparent, it is only lime water, give it. Everybody, parents said, I would give Coke. I would give them 7-Up. So they disrupted the 7-Up market. They entered at the bottom. And over a period of time, there is something called flanking strategy. Flanking strategy is, they introduced Pepsi. They told Pepsi, we are not Coke because we are sweeter than Coke. We are not 7-Up because we do not have the same color. And slowly they entered the market. There are some people we call it as the guerrilla strategy. They don't care for anything. Red Bull. To jo bhi kar le, I am different. They don't care for it. Can we see this in some other industry? Look at automobile industry. Defensive. When Rahul Bajaj decided to throw away the scooter and start bikes, he had a big competitor called Hero Honda. And Hero Honda was selling with what? Fill it, shut it, forget it. Remember? Yes. And their unique selling proposition was mileage, fuel efficiency. Whatever you do to beat Hero Honda will only get a good name. Hero Honda increased their fuel efficiency from 80 kilometers to 82 kilometers. And Bajaj is saying, man, I have done it to 85 kilometers. Who wants a bike? Forget it. Customers don't like better products, products which are better. They like different products. So he used the offensive strategy. They created a bike called Pulsar. And the Pulsar is what? 150cc. And they told the market, you want a fuel efficient bike? Go buy Hero Honda, no problem. But if you want a bike which is sexy, where girls will sit behind you, man, definitely male guy, come buy our bike. It became a super hit. After that, they introduced their mainstream bike. What was the mainstream bike? Flanking strategy. Bajaj Discover. 110cc, not 100cc. And what was the tagline? Mileage ka naya satya. Because they were also producing mileage. And there is somebody called Gorilla even here. Bullet. So jo bhi kar le, I don't care, I have my own market. So it is important to know industry, you will go and do it. I often tell this. Why did Kingfisher fail? They were a daru manufacturing company. They went to airline, totally different business. Instead of focusing on business model, they were only focusing on models. They could survive the market. They could survive the market. Focus on how to do business, not only on models. Do you see a pattern in this graph? Do you see a pattern in this graph? United States and Europe were disrupted by Japan. Japan was disrupted by Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong. They were disrupted by China, and we are disrupting now. I did not want to put who is disrupting us for the moment. I thought people will feel down. So I said, let's put it here. Do you see a pattern here? All the disruptors are Asia. Why? Why don't you see South American countries disrupting globally, or even African countries disrupting globally? Why is that Asia is disrupting globally?
Population.
Mindset.
It may be a mindset. Okay, let's understand with a couple of examples. Dell. This is the story of Dell. Dell once upon a time was doing everything in the United States, selling every great product, every great computer there. And they started off by doing motherboards, computer assembly, supply chain, product and brand. Dell, to reduce their cost, were using something called a Taiwan-based company called ASUSTeK. So ASUSTeK told Dell, hey, motherboard is my expertise, man. We do motherboards for thousands of companies. Give it to us. Now what will happen if you give this to us? Your profitability will go up. Your business would run the same. You can still sell the same number of computers. By selling the same income, your profits go up. Tell me, who will not do this business? Income utna hi hai, lekin profits zyada ho raha hai. Who will not do this business? The Dell analyst saw it and said, yes man, what they're saying is correct. Let's outsource the motherboard to ASUSTeK. So they outsourced it. After some time, ASUSTeK came back and said that, hey, computer assembly is our core business. Why are you worried about it? We will give you more profits. Same income, more profit. Have I told the story again? This was what happened. And finally, they said, today ASUSTeK is completely assembling everything, giving to Dell, and Dell is only putting one small tag. Dell, that's all. So eventually what has happened is the entire core business, the supply chain, logistics, the people, the learning, everything got transferred to Taiwan. Why? Pursuit of profit. Let's take another example to see what we have done to the world. How many of you, maybe sometime in 1980s, had a refrigerator in your house? Did you have freezer at that time?
Yeah.
Only 3 or 4 hands went up. Why? Because there was nothing like a freezer. The minimum temperature that your refrigerator could do is about 2 degrees. Not even 0. So you never had that real ice actually there. Why? Because refrigerators were very costly in India. We had to import it from the outer world. In order to import it from outer world, a small company called Godrej came with understood this effect called as the Peltier effect. Two metals, bismuth and copper, if you connect the two and put a battery, the point where the electricity, the current flows from copper to bismuth becomes cold, and from bismuth to copper becomes hot. They said, why can't we use this technique and build a small refrigerator? This is called disruptive innovation. They started doing a small refrigerator in India. Godrej did the first refrigerator in India. It was highly done, and over a period of time, they expanded the market. Now what happened because of this is, cost of the refrigerator, which was about $150, reduced to about $35. Right? Once Godrej disrupted the market, Godrej said, what do I do next? Let me go and see if I can actually create some refrigerators which are more commercial. Can I go into refrigerators that are household? Can we open shops where we can have small kind of refrigerators and big houses like storage, which is again refrigerated? Over a period of time, they started disrupting the entire refrigeration market. Now, what happened? From where does growth come from in an organization or a country? Where does growth come from? Because of this, more household people started buying it, which means more jobs were created in India, which means more manufacturers were there. Again, distributors. Again, what happens if something goes wrong? Rework. Again, you created a market for rework. People started learning the art of fixing refrigerators and trying to do some business there. Eventually, more finance term came in. Essentially, new business started. So growth comes from these three important aspects. It has to be domestic capital, it has to be domestic distribution, and it has to be domestic creation. That's why I tell startups are so important for India. If you cannot develop startups in India, then we are only buying China products. Eventually, China is becoming rich with our money. If you really want to grow your country, we have to start creating disruptions. And don't worry, disruptions will not take away our jobs. It will create new jobs for us. There is no fear of creating disruptive innovation. It is going to create new jobs for us. This is the concept of Make in India that was given by Prime Minister Modi. To understand Make in India, you have to be born in India. Born in Italy, you can't understand Make in India. I hope you got the message. The whole concept of innovation starts from microeconomics to macroeconomics. You don't go and disrupt at the top. From the bottom, you improve it. Disruption is the leader for prosperity. More startups come, they disrupt the market. We create more businesses in India. That is how we as a nation can grow. We get more jobs, more job opportunities can be created. Remember, gravity doesn't differentiate anybody. It just pulls everybody. If you are really able to deal with gravity, you will deal with it. Otherwise, you will get sucked into the earth one day. And I would suggest let's be a part of disruption and let's grow the country. Right? The last thing that I want to talk about before I show two small snippet videos are the Western world calls the world the world. In India, we call the world Sansar. Sansar is family. If we don't take care of our family, who will take care of our family? Time has come for us to realize the challenges that we see in our country. Let us grow this country. Let us not just grow, let us grow other countries and create a world where we can live. Otherwise, our children cannot live in this world. Okay. To close my presentation, just watch these two small videos. Quite a few must have watched it, but just watch it. Let's play this video.
The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla?
How many of you saw the gorilla?
For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game?
How many of you saw it? See, only 4 or 5 hands went
Let's
up.
rewind and watch it again. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
These are called disruptive innovators who
And
come to
that's
the
the
market.
monkey business illusion. Learn
So-
more about this illusion and the original gorilla experiment at theinvisible-gorilla.com. The monkey business illusion.
So while we are really doing business, focusing on our world on a day-to-day basis, focus on trying to see how you can become a disruptor in the market, how we can create our own markets, how we can grow organizations, grow people, grow organizations, grow nations, help other nations to grow, and finally become a global citizen. Thank you very much. Before I close, I want to tell you the Indian way of thanking you. Anybody can guess what is it? Jai Hind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.